Hello, it's Tuesday, it's 4 o'clock in the UK, and welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And my name is Jo, and we are joined by the wonderful Steve Street today, who we are going to talk to about influencing culture fit in your recruitment process, and I'm sure a few other things as well, aren't we, James?
Yeah, definitely a few other things. I mean, I've known Steve for many years now, and always and I've been so looking forward to him coming on. He probably doesn't believe me, but just because some of the things he says, which are just really engaging and make me smile and laugh and think, yeah, he's right. So I hope everybody who's going to be listening in today will actually enjoy it as much as I'm going to enjoy it, certainly. So, Steve, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, give a little bit about your background and who you are and why you turned up today.
Okay, so my name's Steve Street. I'm the CEO of Cube Talent and also Indigo Healthcare Recruitment. We collectively call ourselves Talent Team. So there's two distinct businesses within the group. I used to own a business called Relay Recruitment back in the day. We kicked that off in '96 and we sold it in 2011. And did a little bit of work in between with the company we sold to. And actually, I worked with you, James, and Plaman and Paul back in the day, somewhere in between. The reason I call myself CEO, without being too cheesy, is Chief Enabling Officer, because I'm desperate now to see this next generation of people within my business kind of step up and step in and take the reins. We're working towards, or we're executing a strategy called our Next Gen, so Next Generation Succession Team. And the idea, the concept is, on or before the 31st of December 2025, there'll be an event, and that event will be the handover of control to our Next Generation Succession Team. Myself and my other shareholders will be returning some shares to the business. We'll hopefully be taking some cash off the balance sheet, and we'll be reissuing those shares in the form of equity to this succession team. The reason I call myself CEO is to leave the MD or Group MD chair open and vacant. And that's really to signal the fact it's there, it's ready, and it's for someone to step up to and sit down on and get on and take control of the business from 2025 onwards. So that's the plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, it sounds really exciting, and I love that twist on the CEO angle, Chief Enablement Officer. And obviously, you know, it's nice to see, because one thing, really important things I think we said there, Steve, is you have a plan. And you know, so often in recruitment, we see people go from day to day, you know, looking not much further than the next month or the next quarter in advance. So it's really interesting to sort of see that go through.
Can I ask a question before we go on? And it is to do with culture fit, I suppose, but more, I suppose, with culture in your business. I love the plan that you've got. Like you said, I think it's great. You've got a plan. Everyone sort of buys into the common goal. When you shared your plan with your business, did you notice a difference in terms of just motivation levels or engagement with your team once you had that plan in place?
I think businesses, so just from my own experience, got into recruitment June 1993. From my own experience in recruitment, but also consulting, also as an investor, also as a non-executive director in a handful of other companies, is companies seem to fall into three types. There are companies that don't plan, and you might say, by definition, improvise, make it up as they go along and wing it. It's a fact. Businesses that do plan, but they're not particularly inclusive in that planning. It's often the small select group of people who go off and kind of scheme and decide what they want out of the business, and then expect a group of other people who've not been privy to the plan, who've not had an opportunity to shape or influence the plan, to execute it on the behalf of these people. And there are another type of business that's much more inclusive in that planning process, and invite people to share their ideas in terms of what's the best way forward, where are we trying to get to and why. I also observe that lots of companies are heavy on the what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but the struggle when it comes to kind of the why, whether that's an existential why, or how profitable can we be, or how sustainable can we be, or how competitive can we be, seem to be a bit light on the why. And I think the key with a plan that you can execute and successfully execute is, I think it's incumbent upon the shareholders or the executives, the seniors in the business, to be very mindful of the fact that they've worked out what they want and why. You've got to translate that plan into what that means to every single individual within the organization, whether that's a group of people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, People who are motivated by a sense of belonging, association, and security, or people who are motivated by the opportunity to take control, enrich themselves, whatever it might be. So you have to translate that strategy and that vision into what that means to every single individual. I think that's the only way you're going to get everybody behind it and everybody contributing and everybody, having a stake in it and believing in what it is they're all working towards.
Absolutely.
Well, here.
Absolutely.
From that side of things. So listen, Steve, we've invited you on today just to talk about, about recruitment process and organisations. And I know you've got some fairly strong views because I've heard them and enjoyed them so many times. But I want you to sort of try and I'll try and encapsulate some of that today in terms of to share with the audience some of the things that, the changes that you've seen in the market and also some of the challenges by people ignoring culture in the recruitment process, for example. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how you implement that or what you've been doing. So I think people like to learn from what people have done rather than people pontificate about what they might do, should they do this or the other. But I think you speak from experience rather than not something you haven't done.
I think I know there's this adage, isn't there, that says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you could just buy culture, the more you threw money at it, the better it got. It'd be easy. So culture's quite esoteric and elusive and often quite tacit and intangible, but it's really overt when it's good. So one of the, we all pick stuff up, don't we? You hear things and they resonate with you and you take them with you and you can apply them in different situations. So one of the simplifying things for me is hugely important. There's a lot of jargon banded around and of course language evolves and next thing you find you're not quite using the right parlance or vernacular and you kind of, people are rolling their eyes because you used a different word to describe the exact same thing from last week. And for me, I think it's simple, which is, three things. What does it look like? So I would say to anybody, a business owner, a senior, anybody invested in an organization is you can kind of just get all the data in the world, if you like. You can go off and solicit all the opinion you like, but it comes down to three things and three sensory things. You could basically go out and stand in the middle of the office or whatever it might be, the workplace. Be really honest with yourself, because if you're not honest with yourself, then you're not really going to get to the bottom of how it really is and what's really going on. Just without losing the thread, you maybe bring me back to it. But the other thing I observed working as a non-exec, consultant, investor, advisor, whatever it might be, and I've been on the receiving end a load of that. One of the things I'd say to any business manager or owner is get all the help you can. Don't insulate yourself. Don't fall into the trap. If it's not invented here, it's not worth hearing, trying, or knowing. I did that, and there's a lot of ego behind that, but also a lot of sort of sensibility, paranoia, just being tribal and inward looking. So I've learned probably later on in life than I would have preferred. Is to open my mind and build good networks and get to know people who've have achieved and succeeded in other industries and sectors and learn as much as you can. And I used to call it the owner manager's paradox, which was individuals who own businesses, who are very senior in businesses, who never held to account. There are very little of zero consequences if they get something wrong or they don't deliver. The feet are never held to the fire. I think they fall into the trap of committing to certain objectives, deciding that they're going to embark on a certain strategy or plan. And then kind of the wind goes out the sails, they lose traction, it starts to falter and it ultimately fails. But there are zero consequences. And they normalize that. That can't be healthy. So I used to call that the owner manager's paradox. They just let themselves off the hook because they're not accountable. So one of the things I did in my first company is I was fortunate enough. So a guy called Martin Holden, who was a senior partner at KPMG, now a senior partner at Safri Champness, and Rob Fleming, who's now my business partner and co-investor, but he was one of the founders of Pace Microtechnology, very successful business, and a client of mine at the time. And I just said, I don't trust myself to make the right decisions. I worry about my judgment. I worry about my ego. I worry about the fact that, I'm out my comfort zone. And I'm out my depth on a lot of things. Would you mind mentoring me for the price of a coffee and a bacon sandwich once a month? And I just met them both alternately, the last Thursday in every month, Martin, the last Thursday in the following month, Rob. And Rob was an industrial, ran a big manufacturing company, 4,000 employees, and Martin was a money man. So he was an accountant. But their skill sets complemented themselves. And often, I don't know if you know the Devonshire Arms in Yorkshire. You must. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I used to drive over that little bridge, full of ideas, with like a wad of papers. I used to just like have stuff. Felt comfort by having tons of stuff. And if you ran a highlighter through where the real value was, what actually were you going to execute? What was actually going to work? It was, you could write on the back of a stamp. It was just fluff. Then I'd sit with Rob and Martin and go, hey, I'm thinking of doing this and diversifying in this. And then I'd go back the other way over the bridge. And none of it saw the light of day. Because they went, well, how does that work? And how will that cost you? And how are you going to break into that? And what's your opportunity loss? And what is it a reaction to? So having those two people available to me for a couple of years was game changing. But coming back to making an assessment of your business, as long as you're not thin-skinned, you've got to really kind of just face up to how it really is ask yourself 3 questions. Go stand in the middle of the business where it's all happening and go, right, so with a pad and pen or your phone or whatever, and kind of go, right, what's it look like? What's good about it and what's not so good about it? So, a critical view analysis or observation. What's it look like? Well, it looks like people are not on the phone. They don't look particularly energized. The body language is a bit poor. They seem to be tossing it off in the corner. He's not turned up. They've not turned up. That bin's full of shit. These lights are sort of in the corner. There's coffee cups all over the place. There's crap on the windowsill. Right. What's it sound like? Oh, well, it sounds it's a different company. Very energized people, cooperating, collaborating, helping each other out. The seniors in the business are getting stuck in. They're leading by example. They're maintaining standards. They're keeping the energy up. And what's it feel like? Feels good. Feels good. Or it doesn't feel quite right. But why? So what does it look like? What does it sound like? How does it feel? Can be very revelatory. Can kind of get everything out in front of you, good, bad, and ugly. Once you've identified what it is, you can set about fixing it. And I have an easy best thing, which is, here's a long list of things that need sorting out, need addressing, need looking at and improving. Just put it into a little quadrant. What's easiest to do and what's going to have the best impact? Just do that. Just do that. And everything will change quickly. Then do the stuff that's really, that's going to make a big difference, but it's harder. It's going to more involve. It'll take longer. Don't disappear up your own backside trying to do stuff that's too complex, too time consuming, too resource hungry. That's going to deliver very little in the short term. So
a couple of points I just want to highlight there, Steve.
Kind of work.
Yeah.
Say what?
A couple of things I just want to highlight there, just to reinforce really. So what you said in terms of what helped you is actually that mentorship, that guiding, that coaching you had from other people. It's really important for people listening that you do seek advice, because sometimes if you're in a room and it's crowded with just the one person, you only hear the same thing. And sometimes voicing some of those thoughts that you have and sharing those opinions about what you're looking to do can really make a massive difference to people. So I urge people to say that. And then the second thing is, you just talked about those 3 things about standing in the middle of the room and asking yourself those 3 questions. Just want to check, because Adam's put up a question that says, hi Steve, you mentioned it's about simplifying things and it comes down to the 3 things that moved on. Can you let us know what they were? Were they the same 3 things, or was there something else? Because you said to bring you back to the thread.
Yeah, it's that really, that analysis, and there's nothing scientific about that, nothing majorly involved in that. It's just trust your senses, your eyes and your ears, and the general sentiment and the vibe of the business. And it can be a bit discomforting. It can be incongruous. But I think before the mentorship, before getting your hands on advice and get as much as you can from the right people, I think also, and this just might be me, but I suspect it's not, is that when I set up my own company, I was really just like an okay branch manager. And a situation arose where we had the opportunity, and I kind of 90% of what I was having to learn to do and take responsibility for, I wasn't that good at. But I kind of had that classic sort of imposter syndrome. And I think the how I countered that was to kind of blag my way through things. And I think the way that played out is when I look back at how I managed and how I was and what the dynamics were and how that played into culture, I'm embarrassed about how I went about it. And a lot of that is professional maturity, but I also think it's ego, modesty, just being true and honest with yourself about you don't know what you're doing. You're okay at that, but you're not very good at this. So, fessing up and going, I'm not very good at this, I need to get some help, was kind of like being reborn, really. And I've carried that mindset with me now, and now I'm very generous with what I know and who I know. And this is going to sound super cheesy, but anybody on the call with kids, I say this to people, and some of them tear up. I say to them about the importance of enabling others, the importance of bringing people on and waving people through. And I say to them, Christmas Day, they go, yeah, what about it? Do you get most pleasure out of opening your presents, or do you get untold pleasure out of watching your children open their presents? And they go, watching my children open their presents. That's the analogy I use about just the joy of seeing other people succeed and achieve and get results. And again, going back to Steve Street 1.0, it was kind of all about me because I was doing it all. And then I realized you can't really keep that up. 100% of anybody, you max out quickly. You're on the red line always. You can never scale it beyond your own capacity and capabilities. It's obvious that you have to bring other people on. And if you could download everything you knew and everything you could do, and everybody could upload that overnight, everyone would have superpowers and the business would be amazing. Well, you can't do that, but the next best thing you can do is knowledge transfer, coach, mentor, support, and be generous with what you know and who you know, and play everybody through and play everybody in. And it's easier and more enjoyable.
Excellent.
And more profitable, obviously.
Of course. So this next one, you gave some idea there of effectively not just the culture, but the way that you run your business, which I think is fascinating, hopefully very helpful to people. Let's move it on to the next piece now and talk a little bit about how we can help our end clients, the employers, with understanding the impact of culture in their own recruitment process, because a lot of them are just blind to it in terms of that. So I'd be interested to sort of see how you've moved that, or perhaps some real examples of how you work with clients, employers, that is, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. So right at the outset, and we've all taken the job brief and we all get into conversations at the outset of working with clients, but I kind of take them back to other stages, really, is to remind them and ourselves that, look, we don't compete in a vacuum. We compete in a very dynamic, fast-moving, uncertain, quite aggressive and fairly unforgiving marketplace. And most smart organizations have woken up to the fact that they're going to have to work hard to not just compete for the people they need, but actually find and locate and engage the people they need. Because actually, paradoxically, the people they need, the great dichotomy is most of the best people are not actively looking. They're not languishing out there on a job board or selling themselves on LinkedIn or making applications. They're kind of just 100% immersed in what they're doing and who they're with. A lot of the people we're targeting. So when I work with clients is first things first is, let's remind ourselves that we don't compete in a vacuum. We've got to be better, faster, smarter, more innovative, more incisive than everybody else. Equally, let go of the facts. I often say to clients, name me your top 3 competitors, and I think you'll know where I'm going with this. They'll cite other organizations who do the exact same thing as them. And I'll go, no, let me draw your attention to 3 other things, competing forces. Early retirement. So the 50s and over, the second largest economically inactive group in the job market. A lot of them suffering what's known as the post-pandemic epiphany, which is, well, I've worked from home or I was furloughed, or I'm not sure I want to go back to that workplace and do things the exact same way I did before. They're done with it. Yeah. I think that's important. So there's one, a competitive force. Another competitive force is In-work benefits, people perhaps it's just not economically viable, or childcare for people not to work. That's another factor. Also, then people saying, you know what, my understanding is, and in terms of talking about UK industrial strategy, we know a lot of jobs are being lost in tech. We know a lot of jobs are being lost in finance, financial services, customer services, contact centres, because of the emergence of AI or offshoring. So people now are saying, well, where are the opportunities? And we know a combination of things really is this pivot in industrial strategy, where the government has woken up to the fact that, and we're all in the service industry here, you have to sort of conceive, design, manufacture and sell goods and services to the rest of the world and address our import-export imbalance. So basically our trade deficit. We're also running a trillion pound debt, and the servicing of that debt is immense. So the government's woken up to the fact that, well, hang on a minute. So we're now a high-skill, high-tech, high-pay economy. Not just like that. We basically have to transform the economy back to that. So all of a sudden, some of the best paid jobs, some of the destination jobs, some of the destination employees are starting to look much more attractive. And also a reshoring of a lot of our traditional manufacturing, engineering and technical work back to the UK. So I explain that to the client. That's kind of what's going on. So let's understand the economics, the dynamics of that first, and then that will help inform a fit for purpose strategy. The next thing is just making sure we've got the most compelling message possible to go out there and convey and say. And let's be smart about how we convey that message. So classically, that 1 minute pitch, which is you get in the lift on the ground floor, it's 6 floors, it's 10 seconds a floor, and the ideal candidate for that job you've been struggling to fill or you're worried about not being able to fill just walked in. What did you say? What did you do? What did you offer? That guarantees they're coming to see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And most people in organizations whose job it is to sell the organization or they own it can't. Because they're very good at selling their products and services. They're not very good at selling themselves. So crafting that compelling employer value proposition is basically what needs to happen next. And then showcasing that through we use what we call a candidate storyboard, which is effectively the means by which we pitch your organization. And within that, James, to answer your question, is it's not just, if it's just about the money, expect, there's people out there with deeper pockets and a greater need. And it's a blunt instrument. Don't make it just about the money. Let's think about what motivates high quality people, progression, the quality of the product or the service, your markets, your clients' sustainability, the morality and ethics of the business, your culture and the quality of your leadership, your heritage and the vision for the business, and whether you've invested the time to translate what that vision is to what that means to that individual, whoever they are, and whatever their motivations are. We're good at that because that's what we do. That's what we do.
I think what you're doing there, I think what you're doing there, Steve, is something that's very dear to our hearts, Joe, which is to bring in a consultative process. You haven't just gone in there like a recruiter. No offense if you're blundering and taking the job. This isn't just about taking the job. That was a very different. What you outlined there was very different to what most people talk about, isn't it, Joe?
Absolutely. And, I love the piece there that you said about, going in and talking to the client about how can we promote your opportunity in the best possible light out there? And I do think it's a question that a lot of clients struggle to answer, either because they don't really have a culture in their business or because they do have a culture, but they struggle to sell themselves. We aren't the best at blowing our own trumpets. And I don't know at what point they would have a better expert to come in and help them to do that than somebody like a recruiter who is out there in the market every single day in the talent market, looking at what a candidate's being attracted by, what a top talent being attracted by. So actually, do you think part of our role then is to educate clients or help clients to build EVP and to promote themselves out there in the market, Steve?
Yeah, now I don't want to be contentious or disrespectful, but I've had a few conversations Pardon?
But
that's a good change.
On my best behaviour. So I don't want to be contentious or disrespectful, but I've made an assertion, not an assertion. I've I've made a contention that, look, in-house, we're taking all of our recruitment in-house, so be careful. I can understand top line what the appeal is and what you consider to the benefits to be. You wean the organisation off its addiction to agencies and all the fees and all of that value flowing out the organisation, which is fine, but they better be good, because a lot of people who go in-house think, well, I've got a captive client, everything's going to be easy. Wrong. You have got a captive client, but you're still competing in the same marketplace, up against people, with great networks, very motivated, hyper connected, with the best technology, the best methodology, the best everything available to them. But one of the main downsides of in-house is how insulated you can become from what's really going on and who's doing what. So coming back to your point, Joe, is we're it's a very privileged position we've got, where we're able to work with some of the smartest organizations, in the economy, some of the smartest individuals within the economy, and have these conversations with them and see and learn and know more about what's working and what's not, to help contribute to the ideation and the innovation around, well, what is it? But also you've then got to consider, what was a compelling and effective employer value proposition 3 years ago wouldn't have the same impact or effect now. You've also, I'm a big advocate for whatever you do, don't kind of run as fast as you can staring at your feet. You've got to look up and you've got to look out. So it's the 4th of April, say to any organisation of any meaningful size, I think this is really powerful, by the way, because as a recruiter, you go, you're taking open roles. What have you got for me? There you go. I'll take those. We agree fees and we go away. Boom. If you go, well, right, let's take the 4th of April. Let's move the organisation through time. Presumably, you've got a long-term sort of vision or aspiration for the business. They go, yeah, we have, yeah. A fairly typical scenario is this. We move the organisation through time, let's say 5 years. Now, consider the following knowable considerations, inevitabilities. Is the business going to grow? Oh, it's going to grow, yeah. Will that growth mean more people? Probably yes. Okay, more people. I suspect it'll mean different people. I like saying this bit. I suspect it means different people. What do you mean? I know there's something really romantic about taking everybody on the journey, but I've got some news for you. Lots of people who work for you do not share your vision, do not want to come on the journey. And I'm sure that if you, in your mind's eye, you can think of at least a handful of people you'd rather not see at the other end. And they all go, oh, yeah, you mean that's so-and-so and so-and-so. Good. Well, I don't want to know, but thanks for telling me. Change. Attrition. What is attrition in your organisation? You'd be amazed how many people have got no idea. Or they can tell you, and you go, well, what are you doing about it? Nothing. Just normalise it. Retirees. Now, we're working with a company in the East Midlands at the minute. Great company, ECS Engineering. They're a great company because the MD of the business is grabbing what we're able to do with him and for him with both hands. And we've done a piece of modelling work for them. So retirees, how many people have you got at retirement age now? And how many will you have over the life of this 5-year plan? And underperformers. Who are the top? So 10% of your workforce using the vitality curve are not adding value. They're sitting on your P&L, they're on your payroll at 100% cost of the business. None of them adding 100% value as the job is, designed and required to do. What are you doing about it? And it's a fundamental failure of leadership not to address that and put that right, because everybody knows they're not pulling the weight. Everybody knows they're not a good fit, but you give consent and permission for them to continue the way they are. That will pull your low end Bs down. Then once you've done that, they go, actually, we've identified with this company I'm talking about 94 open roles. So in your big detailed document, your strategy document, where's the detail on exactly who you've identified, who you're competing for, who you need to recruit, how and when? Nothing. And that's the way we work, and certainly the way I work. And that then broadens the scope of the project and the conversation. But that's a cultural thing as well. You've got to bake into the culture the fact we've got fit for purpose strategic workforce planning. It's not an initiative or a campaign or a brain fart. It's got to be baked into the culture of the business that this is how things are done.
Great.
Absolutely,
So, Steve,
absolutely.
you might as well tell the story, Steve, because I love the story. You know, I'm going to ask you to tell a story about it. Is in terms of, you know, when employers, again, who are looking at, you know, reasons why their workforce isn't growing or going the way they want, that they seek to blame the recruiter that they're using. So I think you've got a good way to sort of deflect the attention of the employer away from the recruiter being a problem. The common denominator.
Yeah. So this is where I typically in a meeting, open up a meeting. I think the key is be in the room with the right people. And it's only an observation. I'm not sure it's a fact, but I think it might be. The further you get up in an organization, the more comfortable people are in their own skins, the more open, collaborative, receptive they are, in my opinion, in my experience, you know, in my opinion. So you kind of say, well, look, let's think about some business critical relationships you might have. And I'll kind of go through things. And, you know, rather than look judgmental and or appear to be judgmental, I kind of talk hypothetically about other organizations under other individuals out there. So I'd be saying, look, Joe, James, you know, I talk to these organizations out there. So really as a technique, I'm just kind of talking third person out there. And you think about business critical processes and partnerships. So let's take, you know, who are your accountants? You go, well, we've used KPMG for as long as I can remember, 10, 11, 12 years. Okay, that's good. And so who does your auditing? Because you need a different auditor. Oh, yeah, we use EY for auditing or Safri Champers. All right, that's cool. Who does all your IT? Ooh, in IT, basically, that's the platform for our business. IT goes down, it's game over. So who does your IT? Oh, so. All right, that's interesting. Who does all your sort of investment advice? Who does all of that, you know, in terms of managing your money, advising the board? Which law firm do you use? And what they'll do, I go through all of these, you know, business critical partnerships and go, you know, how long have you been, 13 years, 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, 9 years. So the average tenure is 6 years. Yeah. How many agencies have you used over the last 6 years? Oh, hundreds. They're all shit. And you go, well, they're not really. And, you know, I think the agencies have failed you, where I think that they have basically created a problem for you is they're not being honest with you. I think they've sat in a meeting and nodded all the way through the meeting. Pretty much either implicitly or explicitly agreed to whatever it is you're asking for. And have effectively fall into the trap of you telling them what to do and how to do it and how much they're prepared to pay you for doing it. Now, let's flip that and imagine we commission you. So let's say you're a modular building company. We've basically said we've acquired this piece of land. We've considered a traditional build, but we're now looking at MMC, modern methods of construction. We need you to come in and look at the viability. We need you to kind of go away and come back and advise us. The equivalence is you come back and advise us and we just shut you up mid-sentence and tell you how we want you to do it and how much less we're prepared to pay you for doing it. You pack up and walk out. I call that the Bob Taylor thing. So Bob Taylor is retired now, but he was the chairman of a big glass manufacturing company. And I was taking a brief for a sales director. And he said, so I've got you and I've got Michael Page and I've got so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. I went, okay, Bob, listen. My business partner's got a development company and he's got, let's say, 60 houses going up, luxury houses going up in North Yorkshire. And there's £1 million glass order. And I brought him with me today and he basically says £1 million off on the table. But here's the deal, Bob. Whoever makes it first, whoever makes it cheapest has got the deal. What would you say? And he said, I won't swear, but he said, I'd laugh him out of my effing factory. I said, but that's exactly what you just created here. And he went, I get it now. I get it. I want exclusivity. It's going to be retained. This is how we're going to do it. This is what you can expect. And we filled it. And those anecdotes, those stories allow you to articulate what's really going on. But I think at the end of the day, when you're sitting down with a client, we're either going to be complicit in another substandard experience, or we're going to be stakeholders in a success, not just now, but into the future. What's it going to be? And it's not something we can do to you. It's something we have to do together. We have to co-own what's going to happen next. Because you can have all the capital, all the demand, all the hubris, all the mandates in the world. If you ain't got the right people where you need them, when you need them, all of that's up in the air, and none of us need this up in the air. It needs to be down, ready to go. Is that?
I think. No, that's exactly what I meant.
No, different one.
I don't think we hadn't prepared it. No, it's really good to see, because I think, just trying to bring this around to the topic of conversation, because people sometimes think we're going to talk culture, we're going to try to talk about some other little bits and pieces, but what you're describing there is the culture of recruitment process within organisations. They treat it with disdain. They don't treat it with the level of importance that they gave it in all those examples you gave, whether it's to the legal advisors, the accountants, the auditors, all of those types of things. And it's part of our job to work with organisations on a consultative basis, and that's what we're all about here, to sort of help people understand that you can be consultative, you can stand up for yourself, and you can show clients that actually you can help them change the way they work, because that's what we're about, helping them as well. We're trying to help them put into place this position where it's not just about putting a bum on a seat. It's about putting the right person in the right role in that organisation, who's going to stay with them for the medium to long term and help drive value into that business. And that's sort of what we're looking to do with organisations. Now, Steve, we're in the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, or probably maximum 10 minutes. So, have you got any other examples that you want to get out today? Because you don't have to, because you've spoken a lot about stuff.
Well, no, we were just to let the cat out of the bag. We were sort of trialing me sharing my screen, which I don't do because I might lose you. But what I've dragged in front of me here, but what we talked about when we spoke last week was myself and a colleague went to pitch for a significant, so 32 roles, international recruitment project for a trust within the NHS. Now, I won't name which one because of commercial sensitivities, but they had received their CQC score, and they had an inadequate score, not across the board, but they had a lot of inadequates. Now, getting to the point about culture, they'd come up then with a transformational change strategy, and I'm looking at it now, and what we did was create a direct correlation, a relationship between what they were working towards, what their mission was to get this trust from, being in the 4th quartile to being, what did we say, to being one of the preeminent trusts within the NHS, within the UK, and how easy it is to map their ambitions and their objectives, cultural ambitions and objectives, back to the recruitment / talent strategy. So easy. So, and it's basically a virtuous circle. So if I held it up, it's basically like a donut with the different colours in it. The first thing was achieving for our patients. So that was the first thing where they needed to improve. And so, well, in order to achieve for your patients, you're really going to need world-class doctors, clinicians, non-clinical administration and leadership in that organisation, really to bring about the change you need. So we need to factor that into the candidate specification, and we need to effectively bake that into the process. How are we going to identify? How are we going to assess? How are we going to compete for? How are we going to recruit? And how are we going to retain those people? The next thing was retention, keeping great people. Well, that process starts at the outset by targeting and having the right conversation with the right people in the first place, not misrepresenting or overstating, being open and honest about where you are, and actually inviting these doctors, clinicians and other people to get stuck in to the transformational and culture change program. So beyond their co-role, they want to come in and make a difference. High-performing people like to make a difference. They like to get stuck into other things. So let's make that part of the value proposition, not just the salary and your location and all the rest of it. Let's make that part of it. The next thing was engagement and well-being. The next thing was people development and leadership. The next thing was a support and belonging. The next thing was attracting people. And then the last thing was transforming the trust together. And what you can't say, obviously, on the slide is this virtuous circle. And over here was exactly what our strategy, and we color-coded each of those messages. And that, for us, you could see in the room, they went, that's it. Because if what we're doing for you is not driving the wheels of your strategy, if it's not delivering value beyond filling 32 roles, it's failing. Because it could and it should and it can. And this is how. And all of that was cultural. All of that was about leadership, what it's like to be there, how it feels, how it sounds, how it is. and getting that baked in from the get-go, rather than seeing recruitment as being some detached, abstract thing. It's not. It's the exact same thing. And that I think is what tipped the thing in our favour last week. Or it was week before.
And did you see the penny drop with them? Yeah, when you presented that, Steve, did you see the penny drop for the
big time? Because I think we're the only ones in the room who pulled up their CQC report, and said, we can help you with this. But part of helping you with this is to make sure those 32 new hires fundamentally changes the mix and the quality of the working population within the trust, because that's the only way you're gonna bring about change within the organisation, by putting better people in who bring the right mindset, culture, values, performance, and standards to the place, and dilute all the rest down. You then kind of fall into this. James, on this is really powerful. I'll finish on this one. But if people on the call did this, this can really send some shockwaves through the company. And it's called the change quadrant. So if you just put a quadrant, up here, high levels of energy, high levels of enthusiasm. Is this translating all right on camera? High levels of enthusiasm, high levels of energy, and a quadrant. The people you want are in this top corner. Loads of energy and lots of enthusiasm to drive change and improvement, culture, anything. They're change agents. In this bottom corner, you've got victims, no energy, no enthusiasm, a very passive group of people. Over here, you've got people with lots of I'm really up for it. I really like the sound of it, but I'm not sure how I can contribute. That's critical mass. But this group of people here are poisonous. They're called saboteurs. Loads of energy and no enthusiasm for change or improvement. And what they will do is recruit the victims to their cause. Those people have to be identified and managed out the organisation. The key when it comes to recruitment is to identify them before they come in and pollute the place. Because culture's precious. And once it's damaged, it can be irreparably damaged. And it's precious. And a good leader should challenge it at every turn. It's not let anything go. You go, when is it all right for 2 bulbs to be out or 3 bulbs to be out? Next thing, we're all sitting in darkness. When is it okay for you've got to decide what the standards are. You've got to think about how you want it to be and police it. But live those values and make sure that you're the standard bearer on culture, not outsource that to somebody or a department or think it's going to happen by accident, because it's not.
Yes. Or expect recruiters to go away with a 2-page job description and get those people into your business based on 2 bits of paper. I love that quadrant. I think it's fantastic. Energy and enthusiasm. We're absolute advocates, aren't we, James, of scientific and objective assessment. And I actually think, if you're looking for somebody who can do the job and you base it on a CV, brilliant. You're going to get people in your business all day long. But what you're looking for here is something that's not on somebody's CV. So lastly, I think my question I wanted to ask you, Steve, was how does if a business wants to influence culture in their recruitment process, and we all know that, as you said just then, that starts with the recruitment of people. How would you advise people go about looking for and assessing for things that can't be seen on CVs? So energy, enthusiasm, motivation, willingness, etc.
It's easier than people realise, and I kind of know, Joe, you, James, and other people on the call know this. This appears to, can do, will do. And most organisations recruit on level 1, level 2. Very superficial things, level 1, hand, makeup, hair, suit, eye contact, personable, similar. Oh yeah, I used to be a part of that rugby club. Oh yeah, my dad went to that school. Yeah, I drink in that pub. Very sort of superficial considerations. Level 2, well, they've got the right experience, the right qualifications. They seem to have worked in the right companies. They've done the same job. That's where most organisations generally arrive at a decision. And then when you say to the client, think of the last 2, 3, 4 people who left the organisation, bad leavers. My suspicion is it was never anything to do with a firm handshake and shiny shoes, or where they went to school, or whether they had these qualifications, worked in a similar company. What was it? And they go, yeah, they were just a little bit weird. They didn't fit in. They were, they weren't collaborative. They were a bit poisonous. They were political. They were lazy. They were closed-minded. They were militant. All of these these behaviours, and I think that's key. And it's easy to make an assessment on someone's behaviour. So we do a lot of scenario and competency-based assessments. So we and actually the client will say, well, what do you mean? And we can submit, let's say, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions about, well, here's a situation. You've got, you basically arrived at work on a Monday morning, and you've got a complaint from your largest client. There's £1.5 million worth of value attached to the client. What would you do in what order and why? And what's a satisfactory resolution to that? Who would you involve and why? Or, and just put scenarios to them to see their judgment, their leadership, their temperament, what gets teased out in a stressful situation. So it appears to, can do, will do. Or, we use Thomas International. I think McQuaig's out there, Savile and Holdsworth, is introduce a little bit of objectivity, introduce some sophistication, utilize some science, because it's there. And these are very sophisticated learning machines. And if you're not, I think you are willfully making a leap of faith. And I think you are willfully taking a risk that's avoidable in terms of informing better decisions about who you're going to recruit and why. And also, I say candidates feel, the best candidates will feel reassured by a robust, rigorous, involved and engaging process. Because they say, we don't really want to do that. We don't do that. And I say, it's not about you. Because what I can tell you, the brightest and best candidates are very discerning. And they are engaged with other organizations. And those organizations have been very smart, very innovative with how they're interacting with those candidates. And if you look like you're going to do it on the back of a fact packet, you're going to lose, and you're going to get what's left. Try running a business with what's left. You can't.
Listen, I think that's a fascinating, and it's fascinating for those people. So I think most people would have gone, the thought of thinking, 32 jobs, people just go in and chase the order, not actually sort of evaluate how the client needs to do things better and actually stand up to them and share with them how they're going to make that change and affect that change in the business. So a really good story. And obviously it does lead into, as I say, the way that we work as well, that the fact that you, Steve, and us as well, of course, utilize multiple layers of scientific and objective assessment to help those employers make better hiring decisions. Because the problem out there isn't just recruitment; it's recruitment and retention, and it's really about focusing about that. Listen, it's been a whirlwind. Believe it or not, we've overstayed our welcome. Thankfully, we haven't got switched off because somebody stuck 50p in the meter. But
I think we could have stayed here for a good 2 hours.
James, can I just say, we showcased our intro, and we did some analysis on the digital economy in the countries we're recruiting from. It's almost 100% smartphone ownership. So they were all bought into the fact that if we're not interacting with candidates using our phones and using our intro, which was what we used to demo it, we've got a massive blind spot. So we did, and you helped us with that, for which we're grateful.
And equally, I appreciate you sort of mentioning at the end. But listen, hopefully everybody's enjoyed what you said, Story. I think the stories are fascinating from somebody who's had so much experience in the industry, and the fact you're so willing to share it with everybody is fascinating. So our thanks and appreciation from everybody here at iIntro, and the Retained Recruiter show comes up. So Steve, thank you very much for doing that. If people aren't connected with you, I'd really recommend you connect with you and follow and see. He has some fascinating stories, fun stories as well as the serious ones. A very good person to connect with. So Steve, thank you once again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Joe, anything to add before we go?
Okay.
No, I genuinely could listen to you
you
all day, Steve. I think it was fantastic. Do come back. We will pick another soapbox topic, and do come back and see us again, because I thought that was phenomenal. Thank you.
Indeed. So listen, everybody, thanks very much for staying with us and listening. On behalf of us all, we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. We're going to be back next week, talking next week a little bit about artificial intelligence and things like ChatGPT. So that will be a topic for everyone to join us on. So same time next week, 4 p.m. next Tuesday in the UK, or other times in your various regions. Look forward to seeing you all. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks again, Steve. Take care, everybody. Happy Easter.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.